Maybe you're privileged enough to count yourself among the Hamilton fans who have actually seen the show. Or maybe you're one of those unlucky characters who lives way, way off the Broadway grid, and you don't have the spending cash of the Sultan of Brunei or a Central Asian mineral rights magnate. Well, either way, if all you're paying attention to is Hamilton, an American musical, then you could be forgiven for being led to believe that all of Alexander Hamilton's triumphs and tragedies took place in New York City. But that's just not how the true history played out. So let's take some time now to pay some Hamilton respects to the dear old Garden State, New Jersey, USA, because Alexander Hamilton did a lot more than get fatally perforated by a flintlock pistol there.
When it comes to New Jersey, let's start where Hamilton did. The present-day city of Elizabeth, just over the lower part of the bay from New York City itself. Cheek by jowl with Newark International Airport, the landscape is quite different here than it was in 1773. That's when Alexander Hamilton arrived in Elizabeth to hit the books and learn enough Latin and Greek to pass the entrance exams for college. Less than 1 in 3,000 Americans attended the teeny tiny institutions that passed for college in those days. For this whip-smart, low-class charity case fresh off the boat from the Caribbean, a college education could transform him into a respectable gent with a future. The settlement then known as Elizabethtown was the New Jersey capital. And New Jersey, of course, wasn't a state. It was a British colony. For a time, it had even been divided into an East Jersey and a West Jersey. That idea evidently took a long time to die, because in his letters, Hamilton was always referring to the Jerseys. See, he knew even then that the whole place was way too dynamic and diverse to possibly comprise one single land. Hamilton's pre-college crash courses took place at the Presbyterian Academy of Francis Barber. Hamilton studied for about 9 months in a now long-gone building that would have been right near the church and schoolhouse now existing at the corner of Caldwell Place and Broad Street, which is now across the street from a McDonald's. Where did Hamilton's school go? The Redcoats burned it down in 1780. During the Revolutionary War, when George Washington let him off his leash anyways, Hamilton was kind of a gangsta on the battlefield. But it's not likely the limey dragoons and their Tory lickspittles torched his school to settle some personal score. Hamilton's headmaster, Francis Barber, became Colonel Francis Barber during the war, and he wasn't much older than his star student. But the student became the master at the Battle of Yorktown, Virginia in 1781. That's because when Hamilton led his famous charge against Redoubt No. 10 in the British fortifications, Barber was one of the men under his command. Barber lived to tell of the glory and valor of the successful attack, but not for long. In 1782, some of his fellow American soldiers were chopping down trees, and one fell on and squashed him. Barber had long had a reputation for being a domineering taskmaster, and rumors persisted for years that the death by lumber was no accident. Why else is Elizabeth so important in the life of Alexander Hamilton? Well, it's very possibly where he first laid eyes on a vacationing lass from Albany who would someday be his wife. And it's also very possible that he and Aaron Burr, who was older but had gone to the same Presbyterian academy, first crossed paths and sized each other up here. That brings us to Princeton. If even now Princeton carries a whiff of a quiet, idyllic spot in the country, with no big city Jabberwocky to distract from a learning environment, it was an utter boondocks in the 18th century. The burial place of Aaron Burr, you can visit his and other notables' graves at the Princeton Cemetery. Princeton is a place that played an important role in Alexander Hamilton's life 3 major times. For starters, he really, really wanted to come to college here. Hamilton first came to Princeton, probably by stagecoach, with his friend Hercules Mulligan, probably in 1773. The College of New Jersey, which later became Princeton University, was a more esteemed school than where Hamilton eventually ended up. What's more, the College of New Jersey president, Dr. Witherspoon, had a Major Jones for students from the West Indies. That's because most of the students that came from there were the young scions of ultra-rich sugar plantation owners. And they were a far piece more wealthy than what passed for a posh set in mainland North America. Therefore, these West Indians were much more to be counted on when it came to keeping up those tuition payments and making deluxe gifts to the school. Alas, old Dr. Witherspoon had to reject Hamilton's application, because the ambitious young man expected to be able to hoover up all the college credits he needed in half the usual time. So young scholar Hamilton had to settle for his safety school, King's College in New York City. The man didn't set foot upon Garden State soil for a couple of years after that. Now, if you read the Ron Chernow Hamilton biography, he asserts on page 75 that Hamilton gallantly led a nighttime attack of 100 men against the Sandy Hook Lighthouse, which is in Monmouth County, New Jersey. There are lots of good reasons to believe this didn't really happen. Hamilton, who always had an ego to be reckoned with, never even mentioned this episode in any of his writings. And even his family members and friends like Hercules Mulligan, who were not below fluffing up Hamilton's reputation, even to the point of telling little white lies, don't speak of it either. Hamilton does not exactly make a triumphant return to New Jersey. In the summer of 1776, a vast British expeditionary force invaded and quickly made short work of the American troops attempting to defend New York City. George Washington, with Hamilton quite far beneath him in the military pecking order, had to retreat out of Manhattan Island. With no path trains, Holland or Lincoln tunnels, or George Washington Bridge, there was nowhere to escape to but to go north into Westchester County. Quite a ways up the Hudson, Hamilton and some other American rebels crossed by boat to the river's west side and marched south. That means that on about November 13th, 1776, Hamilton re-entered New Jersey. He probably crossed by foot into Bergen County at some place like modern Brockley, Alpine, or Northville. Hamilton spent the next day at Fort Lee, and then marched to a camp and temporary headquarters at Hackensack. Things were pretty dark for the Patriot Army at this point. Now, Washington had known that New York was going to be essentially impossible for him to defend, but losing it still made him look like a weak general. One thing he absolutely couldn't afford: to lose Philadelphia at this point as well. With the army Hamilton was part of unable to hold any New Jersey territory against the British onslaught, Washington led his men deeper into the Garden State, both to defend themselves and the roads to the capital city. By the end of November 1776, the strategic retreat brought Hamilton to Newark, and then New Brunswick, home of Rutgers University. Hamilton displayed some notable heroism there at New Brunswick. On December 1st, he and his cannon crew successfully held off the advancing British and their Hessian mercenary allies long enough to let the rest of the American army cross the Raritan River by a small wooden bridge they burned behind them. Hamilton spent the rest of that week watching New Jersey slip away behind him. By December 8th, 1776, the retreating Patriots had reached the vicinity of Titusville. There, they crossed the Delaware River by commandeered flat-bottomed Durham boats and found snowy sanctuary in Bucks County, PA. That ends part 1 of Alexander Hamilton in New Jersey. It's only the final days of 1776, and Hamilton is just getting started in the Garden State. Here are only a few of the places we'll cover next in the series, along with way more Princeton and New Brunswick.
Well, thanks for watching. And for even more true Alexander Hamilton history, be sure to check out my book, Alexander Hamilton, The Graphic History of an American Founding Father, from Penguin Random House 10-Speed Press.